the underdog boxer who saved the world when fists triumph over magic. Like, share and subscribe. Episode 11. Shadow of Ghostface. Yian did not continue to stop him. He leaned on the bench and looked up at the bright ceiling. There was only one thing in his mind. If I kill Ji Qing, will his father kill me? But it doesn't really matter. If you can't decide how to die, then at least you have to decide how to live. It is Ji Qing's personal wish to practice boxing, so let's do it. At last. Yian closed his eyes, entered the dreamland, and started practicing. At this time, Ji Qing looked back at Yian, feeling a little puzzled. Didn't he sleep last night? Why are you sleeping again now? I can sleep so well, so envious. I don't know how long it took. Sudden. The DDD alarm sounds. Ji Qing frowned. Yian opened his eyes. Fine. After saying that, he looked at Ji Qing, who had already blown up 1,500 kilograms of sandbags, but there was no sweat on his body. Yian stepped forward and touched Ji Qing's forehead. At about 20 degrees, my complexion has improved a lot, and the expression on my face has become much more vivid. Ji Qing let Yian touch her forehead, raised her head and asked softly, "What is that alarm sound?" The voice was gentle and the eyes were gentle, instantly dazzling Yian. It's just two people. Without life, he is a robot, but when life begins to surge, he is like a holy goddess. This is still her at 20 degrees Celsius. How vivid would it be if she completely returned to normal body temperature? The most beautiful thing in this world is vitality. Almost all human beings enjoy the spectacular beauty of nature. But most people can't tell why, they just think it looks good. Yian knew that it was because the vitality of nature was so strong that it had an instinctive attraction for humans. Then he walked to the alarm bell and pressed the red button. The alarm goes off. Yian walked to a wardrobe, turned his back to Ji Qing and said, "I want to go out." Ah? Ji Qing's eyes flashed with panic and she said, "Where are you going? What are you doing?" "I'm going on a mission." Yian said calmly, "I have lived in this small city since I was a child. The resources here cannot support my infinite level. I must join the army, complete various tasks, and use my accumulated military exploits to exchange resources." After saying that, he had already changed his clothes. The black cloak and grimace mask completely covered his whole body. Ji Qing was confused. "Why are you dressed like this? So ugly." Yian said calmly, "There is no way, I have been on mission since I was 14 years old. A 14-year-old child doesn't feel any oppression in the eyes of criminals. They just find it funny. People don't trust people who are too young, there's this weird age cult. In this climate, if I want to do something, I have to cover my face." Then, he answered the phone call from Xingtai. It was Li Tang calling. A demon spy appeared, and he went to blow up the bank. Just now, the other party took a hostage and asked them to meet him by name, which is you. But the imperial guards in the city did not pass this news to the military. Their snipers acted without authorization and missed the target. The devil's agent broke the jar and blew up the bank. The number of casualties is currently unknown, but the demon spy grabbed the hostages and ran away. The other party is moving at high speed, and the hostage is still pregnant. It's difficult to handle. Yian said calmly, "I know. Tell everyone not to act rashly and wait for me." After saying that, Xingtai hung up. Ji Qing said quickly, "I'll go with you." Yian shook his head and said, "Stay at home and don't go out." "Not good." Ji Qing shook her head. "You just promised me that you would listen to me. I have to protect you. This is the task my father left me. You are too far away from me, so I can't protect you," Ji Qing said. Yian pouted and said, "Do you think I'm weak?" After Ji Qing thought for 2 seconds, she nodded seriously twice. "Yian. Stay still. Leave, we'll be back soon." Yian snorted, waved his robe, turned around and walked out of the back door of the basement. Boom. The door slams loudly. Ji Qing trembled and took a step back. She was left in this dark room. After a few seconds, the cold hit me again. She seemed to be back in her bedroom at home, cold and silent, and a strong sense of loss filled her heart. Then, she turned and glanced at the punching bag, and suddenly she was no longer interested in punching. After being silent for a long time, she clenched her fists and pursed her lips, as if she had made some kind of determination. At last, She walked to Yian's wardrobe. There is a row of identical Ghostface costumes here. She found a suit and put it on. It's a bit long and looks like a skirt. But it doesn't matter. After putting it on, her body floated into the air, her feet lifted off the ground, and she quickly flew out of the basement, looking for Yian. Episode 12. Crisis Moment. In the scattered towers. There was confusion on Yian's face under the mask. What do the demons want from me? It's okay if they want to surround and kill me on the front line. Is it worth it to detonate their spies hiding in Tianshui City for a little person like me? To train a spy, the demon clan has to pay a huge price. Just for me? I am not a person who can defeat thousands of troops on the battlefield. He's just a frontline soldier and part-time police officer in the rear. His daily life consists of killing demons and pretending to be a masked hero. Although the number of demons he had killed over the years had increased, Yian always felt that he was not worth the huge price the demons had to pay to deal with him. What I don't even understand is, how can you deal with me if you send a demon spy? If I were so easy to deal with, I would be dead. Think of this. Yian, who was speeding up a tall building, had already seen the figure of the demon spy. It was a lean man. His naked upper body was marked with densely packed demonic runes. These runes caused the man's whole body to bleed violently, his speed, strength, and reflexes all greatly improved, and he became very cruel, with his mouth full of blood, and he laughed deliriously. Ha 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 ha. Come and catch me. Weak humans. Come and catch me. At this time, the demon spy suddenly saw Yian. The two looked at each other. The demon spy grinned and raised his fingers. Yian narrowed his eyes and followed closely. At this moment, energy fighter jets, armed helicopters, and the ascetic army were all gathering towards where the demon spies were. A demon spy wreaked havoc in the city and killed so many people. Who should give this responsibility? The manager of this city. So the city lord was calling like crazy in his mansion, calling whoever he could. Whoever can kill that spy is my father. Now, 3 people in the bank have been declared dead after failure to rescue them. If more people died next, he couldn't imagine what kind of trial he would face. Now, ahead of the 7th Great Wall, Li Tang, the district chief of the 67th War Zone, has also arrived at the scene in an armed helicopter. He stood on a high place overlooking the overall situation, frowning, and shouted angrily into the intercom, "Then what is the city lord doing? Why are all the city's troops in Beijing district? This is probably a plan to lure the tiger away from the mountain." The news quickly reached the ears of the city lord. The city lord turned a deaf ear and asked in a panic, "Have you caught him? Did you catch that demon spy?" The guard replied helplessly, "The other party has a hostage in his hand and is moving at high speed. The sniper's shot just missed. This time we don't dare to act rashly." City Lord Chen Shanshui roared angrily, "Who can tell me why the shot missed just now?" The guard said in a panic, "Our sheriff is not high level, and his talent is not high either. That demon spy has 4th level magic marks on his body. It's not that we missed the shot, it's that he reacted too quickly. If we reported it to the military region earlier and let professionals handle it, we would definitely." He didn't dare to say more. Sure enough, the city lord was furious on the spot. Isn't the reason why he didn't tell the military region because he didn't want to make the matter bigger? Those soldiers who don't understand the world will definitely tell the truth to the superiors about the presence of demon spies in my city. Then I will still be in trouble. These guards don't understand at all. Get out. Chen Shanjue slapped the guard in the face, then knelt in front of the human gods, bowed his head and prayed, asking the gods to bless him to survive this disaster. At the same time, outside the North City gate, the demon spy grabbed the hostage, grinned his scarlet mouth, and said, "Where is Ghostface? Let him come down." Ghostface landed without hesitation. Behind. All the soldiers and police officers breathed a sigh of relief when they looked at this mysterious man. As long as the Ghostface comes, half of the problem will basically be solved. He is not the kind of thief who plays outside the rules. He is a soldier himself. Almost everyone present has fought alongside him and knows how reliable he is. I just don't understand why he always wears a mask. It's no big deal to show his true face. Maybe I want to keep a low profile, but after a few years, I can accept it even if I don't understand it. At this time, Ghostface spoke, his voice was rough and obviously processed. 4th level magic pattern. It's very expensive. It's not worth it just to deal with little people like me, right? Ghostface stood in front of the demon spies, raising his hands to indicate that he had nothing in his hands, but his posture was very casual, and he was even walking back and forth. The demon spy grinned and said, "If you are just a ghost face, then of course it is not worth using the 4th level magic pattern against you." Sudden. The demon spy's expression showed a hint of astonishment. The next second, he tilted his head and died on the spot. Just as everyone was about to rush forward. The next second. The demonic patterns on the demon spy's body once again bloomed with dazzling light. He raised his head suddenly, the madness in his eyes was less and more rational, but the brutality and bloodshed were still the same. What a pathetic fool to think that I would actually give you a human favor as promised. The ghost face smiled and said, "Tisk tsk, the puppet is dead, and the real owner is here? So you're looking for me?" The visitor said calmly, "Yes, let me introduce myself. My name is Shidwa. I am a genius from the demon clan. You can shoot me, it doesn't matter. Anyway, with my ability, it is not difficult to take away the life of an ordinary person before this body collapses and dies." Sito lowered his head and glanced at the frightened young woman, then suddenly sneered and said, "Is there a child in the belly? 2 lives. Ha ha." Shiduo laughed unscrupulously, looked up at Ghostface, and said, "Do you want to save her? What do you want?" The casualness in Ghostface's voice disappeared, and it turned serious. "The first thing," Shidwa said excitedly, "it's very simple. Take off your mask." Under the mask, Yi En's pupils suddenly shrank. Why would the other party make this request? At this time, Shiduo said indifferently, "Now I will tell you why I spent the 4th level magic pattern to deal with you. Because you are a super genius of the human race. Some time ago, the clan just launched an interesting event. The killing order for human geniuses. Graded according to talent. I just asked my wizard to do the math. Episode 13. My sister. Where is the genius closest to me and with the greatest chance of killing? Who is it? The answer is ready to come out. It's you. How much does the 4th level magic pattern cost? You, a guy with infinite talents, are worth 3 million in battle merit. Come, let everyone see your young face under that mask." This is the end of this sentence. Everyone's expressions changed slightly. Is there a young face under the ghost mask? This is a bit unbelievable. At this time, Li Tang's voice rang in Yian's ears. "Find a way to scare him, then I'll shoot and kill him." High in the air, Li Tang had a 3-meter-long heavy sniper mounted on his mechanical legs. Half of his body was exposed outside the armed helicopter, and he stared at the 16th-fold mirror with a focused gaze. Below. Yian put his hand on the mask and said calmly, "Don't be scared by my face. It's ridiculous." Sito snorted coldly. Then, Yian quickly took off his mask without any pause. Everyone looked attentively. The next second, everyone was startled. Just at this moment. Boom. There was a loud noise in the sky. On the ground, Yi En's Achilles tendons contracted violently and exploded, like a cheetah exploding in an instant. The dream started, and the world slowed down 10 times. He increased his speed to the extreme, leaned forward highly, and charged forward with all his strength. I saw that the bullet, after slowing down 10 times, was still like an aurora, quickly penetrating Shiduo's head. Shidwa's body fell backwards under the powerful impact, an angry look appeared on his face, and he raised his hand fiercely to tear the pregnant woman's neck apart. An ordinary person is as fragile as a piece of paper in front of his claws. Yi En's eyes were full of determination, and he saw his body tilting towards the ground. The talent of the Supreme Fist was activated, and the majestic fist energy surged out of his right hand, and it hit the ground heavily. The fist hit the ground. Boom. A loud bang. He received a terrifying reaction force, his legs lifted off the ground, and his whole figure was like a missile, flying straight parallel to the earth. The inertia is too great and the speed is too fast. Unable to pull people. But it's definitely enough to push away the body possessed by Sito. Yian stretched out his arms and opened his palms. Shidwa also used all his strength, and his claws were about to touch the woman's neck. But just when Sito's palm was about to slap the woman's head, Yian's palm pressed down on Shiduo's chest first. He pushed Sito away. Dreams unlocked. The flow of world time returns to normal. Everyone clenched their fists excitedly. But the next second. Go to hell. Sito covered the bloody hole in his head and roared. All the magic patterns on this body began to flash, and the energy was about to explode. Yian's face changed slightly. The explosive power of the 4th level magic pattern is enough to level the entire city block instantly. Dee dee dee. The sound of rapid energy explosion sounded in Yian's ears. But he remained calm and his eyes quickly scanned the surroundings. At 10 times the speed, he could see everything around him clearly, but he couldn't find a good way. So be it. I saw him hugging the woman, turning around, his back to Sito. The next second. The explosion didn't come. Yian raised his head in confusion. The faces of everyone in front of him were filled with astonishment, as if something outrageous had suddenly happened. Then, Yian clearly felt a strong chill rising behind his back. 1 second it was scorching summer, but this second it seemed like we were entering a world of ice and snow. The cold made him, a thick-skinned guy, move slowly, and the woman in his arms started to chatter and tremble with her upper and lower teeth. After Yian quickly handed the woman to the other soldiers, he turned around and took a look. I was startled for a moment. I saw the magnificent city gate behind me, completely frozen into ice. Shiduo's clone did not explode. His energy was cooled by extreme ice, his body was sealed, and there was no life breath. He was frozen to death on the spot, his eyes were wide open, and he was filled with disbelief before he died. Yian also showed a hint of shock in his eyes. He saw a guy dressed exactly like him, floating in the air above the ice and snow, looking at him. Then, she slowly landed. Because he was not tall enough, his black robe was like a long skirt dragging on the ground. She walked gently, her steps were graceful and calm. At this moment, everyone was staring at her, their hearts beating wildly. Yian didn't see it, but others saw it clearly. The moment the opponent fell from the sky, the entire city gate and everything around it froze instantly. Moreover, this huge sea of ice did not harm an innocent person. She was floating in the sky, covering up the sun, as if she were the only one in the world. Sacred, inviolable, not to be blasphemed, respected by all people. Li Tang's voice also sounded in Yian's ears. Who is that? He didn't know how to answer for a moment. After thinking about it, he realized that she was the daughter of the Generalissimo. The Generalissimo and Yi Tianwen are close friends, and Yi Tianwen is his ancestor, so. My sister. You fart. Li Tang scolded. When did you have such a rebellious sister? Why didn't I know? I'm too lazy to pay attention to you. Yian took off his headphones. He looked back at the soldiers around him and said with a smile, is everything okay? After saying that, he pointed to his face and said, are you handsome? Quite handsome, right? After saying that, he snapped his fingers at Ji Qing, indicating for her to follow his pace, and then turned around and left. Everyone couldn't laugh or cry. Handsome? Yian's ghost face is not his real face. And a smiley face mask. This guy is wearing 2 masks. It is simply the king of masks. That's why everyone lost their minds at that moment. In the battlefield, a delay of 1 second is called a delayed fighter plane in professional terms, and the consequences are very serious. The matter is resolved. Everyone is happy. But people are also confused. Since when have there been 2 ghost faces in this city? Shadow clone? On the other side, in the tower. Ji Qing did not take off her mask, but lowered her head with an unknown expression. Yian looked at her without blaming her. The image of the entire city gate turning into an ice sculpture appeared in his mind, and he sighed, it's amazing. Ji Qing nodded twice like a chicken pecking at rice, and said, don't you blame me? What's your fault? Yian wondered. It's my fault for not being obedient. It's okay. Yian shook his head with a casual look on his face. It's good that the matter is resolved. At this time, Ji Qing whispered again, then wherever you go from now on, you must take me with you. You are too weak. You were almost killed by the explosion just now. Take me with you. I can protect you. Yian? But then he thought about it, Ji Qing had just erupted such a huge amount of ice, but no innocent people were harmed at all. This surprised him, because in his eyes, Ji Qing should be an uncontrollable bomb. The floor inside the house is still covered in ice. As a result, the fight was so clean and simple. Did your dad teach you how to fight? No. Ji Qing shook her head. But my dad told me that I didn't need to learn how to fight, I was a born warrior. Yian thought, is the bloodline inheritance? The child of a generalissimo and a female general does not seem to need to learn to fight. Killing enemies and saving people is just like instinct. At this time, Yian suddenly noticed a slight emotional fluctuation in Ji Qing's voice, which was stronger than before. So he immediately took off Ji Qing's mask and saw a line of blood on her holy face. Sacred and weak, but his eyes were pure, looking at him blankly. The three emotions were very contradictory, making Yian feel itchy inexplicably. Bleeding, doesn't it hurt? Yian asked. Ji Qing thought about how she felt alone in the darkroom after Yian left, and then thought about the feeling of bleeding. She replied seriously, it doesn't hurt if it bleeds next to you. Yian felt that this answer was strange, but he didn't think much about it. He gently wiped away the blood from the corner of Ji Qing's mouth with his hand, and then put his hand on Ji Qing's forehead. It's at least 24 degrees. A little higher. You didn't practice boxing, why did your body temperature still rise? Ji Qing said, the moment I saw you in danger, I felt very excited and warmed up all of a sudden. Yian nodded silently and said, this is called an adrenaline burst. Interesting. Episode 14. Extreme speed. Go home. Yian put a mask on Ji Qing and touched her head naturally. Ji Qing lowered her head obediently without any resistance. Yian only realized after touching it, was he a bit of a beast? Why are you touching people randomly? It's so easy. But her hair was so hard, like an ice pick. Then, the two of them walked back home, one after the other, under the sunshine. At this moment, Ji Qing didn't seem to be so afraid of light, maybe because her whole body was wrapped tightly. She felt a little comfortable and jumped a little subconsciously. This is unusual. Yian quickly asked, what's wrong? No. It's okay. Ji Qing lowered her head and shook her head, her voice was very soft. She seemed a little shy, very faint, but Yian's perception was extremely clear. This made Yian feel inexplicably happy, and a faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Sudden. There was another news about Li Tang on his star platform. You brat, why did you take off your headphones? There are 2 spies, and the young city lord has been captured. Yian replied crisply, location. You don't need to go this time. Li Tang said lightly, the city lord is lucky. There happened to be a human genius of the same infinite level as you who passed by here. Yian suddenly smiled and said, then I should go and see it. Except for a freak like Ji Qing, what level would the other infinite levels be? At this time, Li Tang responded abruptly, you haven't even kept up with your realm, why are you looking for someone to do it? Suddenly, he said in surprise, the hostage rescue is complete. So fast? Yian, if you want to see that monster on Earth, you can go to the city lord's mansion. That guy has completed his mission and is on his way back to send the hostages back. When Yian heard this, he quickly took Ji Qing to the city lord's mansion. As soon as I arrived at the door, I clearly saw a clear sword sound coming from outside the city, and pure white sword light fell on the city lord's mansion in the blink of an eye. Yian looked up. The son of the city lord's mansion was so frightened that he went into shock and fell into a coma. That human monster is very ordinary. At least he looks ordinary, wearing black and white clothes, black-rimmed eyes, thick white bandages on his hands, and a lean figure. At this time, he turned his head and looked at Yian and Ji Qing. No, to be precise, he was looking at Ji Qing. He didn't look at Yian, but stared at Ji Qing in black robe with concentrated eyes. Ji Qing also looked up at the other party. I saw a little fighting spirit on the other side. But Ji Qing was full of doubts, wondering why he was looking at her like this. Although she is wearing a mask, her eyes are still visible. Solely he could clearly see Ji Qing's eyes. He frowned, not understanding the meaning of the other person's eyes. Why doubt? Everyone is a monster, and they all feel that they are the best in the world. It is normal for them to have encountered 2 tricks. In the end, he thought to himself, since the other party had no intention of fighting, then forget it. He acted resolutely, turned around and walked away, turning into sword light and disappearing into the sky. Ji Qing is confused. What's wrong? Yian asked. Ji Qing shook her head, she didn't know how to express that feeling. Really weird. Don't understand. Suddenly, Yian asked, do you think he is powerful? Very impressive. Ji Qing nodded cutely. And me? Not great. Ji-Qing shook her head cutely. Before Yi An's hair stood up, Li Tang's message came again. See that guy? Yi An asked, who is he? Is he strong? Li Tang said calmly, among the contemporary geniuses in the human world, he can at least be ranked among the top 3. And me? Li Tang choked for a moment and said, you still have a lot of room for improvement. After all, you haven't even caught up with them yet. Come on. Yi An curled his lips. So who is he? Li Tang replied, infinite sword control, Li He. You officially entered the battlefield at the age of 15. In 3 years, you have accumulated a lot of military exploits, but his military exploits are more than twice yours. The reason why he is so much higher than you is because 3 demon geniuses equivalent to SSS level have died in his hands. A few more infinites were seriously injured by him. And that's not all his strength. My old friend said that Li He is as crazy as you. His talent is unlimited sword control. The most perfect talent that combines lethality and speed. The infinite sword system is unique in the world. But he changed his job to be a repairman. Jishou. Yi An was surprised and asked, infinite sword system transfers to Jishou? Is he sick? Isn't it better to be a finger cultivator than a fist cultivator? Wouldn't practicing sword turning make you invincible? Li Tang snorted coldly, who in your generation can understand? You also know that unlimited sword master shifting cultivation is a god-level disease? So your dream of turning into a boxer is not a disease? Speaking of which, how did you get that punch to save the pregnant woman just now? I've never seen you use this trick before. Li Tang was referring to the supreme punch that Yi An struck and recoiled from. Yi An pondered for 2 seconds and said, this is the reason why I choose boxing. I'm a born boxer. Really? Li Tang looked cold. Didn't your uncles teach you that? Li Tang was talking about Yi An's father's brother group, a group of people who were all boxing cultivators. They came to Yi An a few years ago and wanted to pick him up in advance and take him to a larger place for training. But Yi An didn't leave. Although Li Tang didn't like that group of people, he thought they were Yi An's friends, shouting nonsense like beliefs and dreams every day. But I have to admit that they are accomplished in boxing, and one of them is one of the generals guarding the First Great Wall. Faced with Li Tang's doubts, Yi An shook his head and said, it has nothing to do with Uncle Zhang and the others. This is my own ability. Really? Li Tang was doubtful, but decided to knock him out that day. At last. I'm going to the city lord's mansion to ask Chen Shanchue what he wants to do. After speaking, Li Tang hung up the communication. The sun sets in the sky. The night hangs in the air. Ji-Qing was inexplicably flustered and leaned against Yi An. Well, much better. Yi An could tell that she was scared and didn't move much. The two were very close. At this moment, Yi An suddenly smelled a fragrant fragrance. He seemed to have a dog's nose. He sniffed it and suddenly it touched Ji-Qing's face. What's wrong? Ji-Qing's voice was still very soft, her lips pursed, and her innocent eyes widened slightly. No, it's okay. Yi An scratched the back of his head and cursed himself as a beast. But why does Ji-Qing have a scent? Why haven't you smelled it before? At this time, he touched Ji-Qing's forehead again. Oh boy, the temperature is getting high again. Around 25.5 degrees. But during this time, she did not practice boxing, nor did she exercise, and her adrenaline was not stimulated. How did the body temperature rise? At the same time. In the marshal's mansion. Jishur paced back and forth in front of the ancestral hall anxiously, looking at the fate cards and ice beads from time to time. Panic. The fate card was cracked 2 or 3 times just now, and the damage was 0.54%. The ice beads also cracked several times and were damaged by 0.36%. Why is it so slow? At this time, the ice bead cracked violently again. 0.56%. The progress has been improved. Jishur took a long breath. Yi An. Although we have never met, you are the successor to the position of marshal in my mind, my son-in-law, the pillar of the future of the human race, and my heart and soul. You have to work hard. It's easy to say anything to save someone's life. If you want this piece of sky, I can give it to you. At this moment, Yi An returned home. The women's sportswear he bought has also arrived. The two came to the boxing gym. Ji Qing quickly put it on, moving very quickly, lowering her head shyly, not like before, like a cold and heartless sculpture, exposed at will. But she didn't go to the secret room either. But Yian still didn't look. My family has an upright character and I never do anything shameful or obscene. Ji Qing is a sickly sister who doesn't understand anything, and I am a human being, not an animal. These words of Justice Lingran kept echoing in Yian's mind, suppressing the fire in his heart. Okay. At this time, Ji Qing's soft voice came. Yian looked back, his heart skipped a beat and he swallowed. Women's sportswear is tight-fitting. Ji Qing is tall, about 1.7 meters tall, with slender white legs, slender waist, and arms as tender as white jade. The figure is concave and convex, slim and graceful. Plus, she had a pure look on her face, looking up at herself in confusion, as if asking why you were so excited. It's simply a crime. Ahem, practice boxing. Yian said seriously. Suddenly, Ji Qing said, I want to spar with you. Then you're still far away. Yian shook his head. Try it. Ji Qing looked at Yian eagerly. Yian chuckled and said, if you can beat me, you win. As he spoke, he put his hands behind his back and tilted his head to look at Ji Qing. Ji Qing's big eyes hardened, she raised her fists and struck quickly. Yian turned slightly to one side and subconsciously pressed his shoulder against Ji Qing's waist. Ji Qing fell to the ground. But there was no pity on Yian's face. Practicing boxing was a sacred thing. He said seriously, remember, punch out 7 points, leave 3 points, to set the stake. The lower plate is everything for a martial artist. If you can't stand firm, everything is in vain. Ji Qing nodded heavily, stood up seriously, and continued to punch Yian. Episode 15. Zhang Sanfeng, Meng Chen. The moon is shining high. The two would fight for hours. Ji Qing didn't even touch Yian. At this moment, her cheeks were slightly red, her little mouth was curled up, and she was staring at Yian with calm eyes. Yian said calmly, I want to mop the floor clean. First we have to clean it up. If you don't practice basic skills well, it will be meaningless, no matter how much you fight in actual combat. You don't have the conditions to meet me now. Strength is not the most important thing. The soul of a boxer lies in agility. You have to swing, you have to be fast, you have to dodge, you have to find the right moment, not silly straight punches. Watch it. Yian stood still, and his body began to sway from side to side, the speed getting faster and faster, until only the afterimage was left, which instantly circled around Ji Qing's body for more than 10 times. Moreover, it is not a hard circle. During the rotation, there is a combination of speed and slowness, virtuality and reality, and left and right flickering. These steps, 8 years of hard work, can you see clearly? Ji Qing suddenly snorted and tapped her little foot. In an instant, ice and snow rose. Yian's feet were frozen. She turned her head and said quietly, I see clearly. Really? Yian's laughter rang in her ears. Ji Qing's eyes changed slightly. What he froze was just an afterimage. The next second, Yian pressed his palm fiercely on Ji Qing's abdomen. This is where the Elemental Master's spiritual palace is located, which is equivalent to the Elemental Master's Achilles heel. Once it is held down, no matter how powerful the source energy in the body is, it cannot be mobilized. If you exert your power over a large area, I might be helpless, but the Elementalist's weaknesses are too fatal. What can you do to me now? As soon as he finished speaking, Yian was suddenly startled, wondering if this gesture was a bit indecent. He leaned behind Ji Qing, put one hand around her waist and pressed her belly, and spoke on her shoulder. Ji Qing's ears seemed to be slightly red. Yian quickly let go. Ji Qing turned around and looked straight at Yian, and said seriously, I will definitely win you. Just use your fists. This firm and serious tone doesn't look like the blue doll. Yian touched Ji Qing's forehead. It's 28 degrees. How do you feel? Yian asked. Much better. If your body heats up, you will die. Are you feeling uncomfortable now? A little bit. Ji Qing frowned. But the next second, she relaxed her eyebrows and smiled slightly, but I would rather stay in this state for 30 days and die than live like an ice sculpture for 2 years. The voice is steady, gentle, full of emotion and strong personal will. Yian applauded and said, I just like people like you. But remember, if you are really going to die, tell your father. It would be terrible if he slapped me to death in a fit of rage. Of course. Jiqing nodded lightly. After speaking, Jiqing turned around and looked directly at the sandbag in front of her, turning her back to Yan and shaking her shoulders. Yan is also preparing to enter the dreamland to exercise. Suddenly, his star station bell rang. Yan looked down and raised his eyebrows. Zhang Sanfeng. Uncle Zhang. A good big brother to my father. He answered the phone. A cheerful voice came from the opposite side, saying, "Unner. I heard that you will change jobs tomorrow. Have you really decided to switch to the planner? Oh, I know that your talent is indeed the perfect candidate for a strategic strategist. But your background will bring you some trouble. It's better to practice boxing." Good practice boxing. Yan smiled and replied, "It's boxing practice. I want to turn to boxing practice. Who said I'm going to switch to the planner?" After hearing this, Zhang Sanfeng's expression changed slightly and he said, "A friend of mine told me this. He said he would pick you up right now." Who? Yan was confused. Suddenly, Zhang Sanfeng stood up abruptly and said, "Meng Chen, you don't know me, it's too bad, he's going to come hard. Wait for me at home." The first Great Wall, the first war zone. A muscular man with a wine bottle hanging from his waist, disheveled hair, and a white plain robe suddenly stood up from the ground. The other side. After Li Tang finished the meeting, he also drove to Yan's home. There was a calm-looking strategic planner sitting in the co-pilot. The war strategist's name is Meng Chen, who comes from the First Great Wall and has a high status. From the moment Yan detected his dream when he was 12 years old, he had been targeted by Meng Chen and his war strategist friends. In the past 6 years, although he had ignored Yan, he had always paid attention to him. This child loves to play, loves freedom, and has a very casual style of doing things, but he is still very steady at critical moments. This alone makes Yan even more beautiful. After 6 years, he should have had enough fun and troubles, and it's time to look like a big shot and do the things that Infinity should do. Can you guarantee that Yan will definitely be able to enter this session of the Human King's Palace? Meng Chen said expressionlessly, "Strategist, I don't like to joke." That's good. Li Tang nodded heavily. At this moment, he felt a little uneasy in his heart. Because Meng Chen was more cold than he thought, with almost no human emotion on his face. Yan would never like to stay with such a person. But that's it. Moreover, by joining Meng Chen's forces, Yan can definitely enter the Palace of Human Kings. That is the strongest class and the highest university in the human world. It is a place where monsters likely gather. Yan will definitely be well trained there and become one of the guardian gods of the human world in the future. Suddenly, Meng Chen lowered his head and glanced at the watch in his hand, frowning slightly. "Drive faster, I only have 5 minutes." Li Tang couldn't help but ask, "Is it something about the first war zone?" Li Tang also received news before that Kyles from the demon world came to the first battle zone of the 7th Great Wall to provoke the human race, intending to challenge the human race on the border and have a vigorous showdown with the contemporary genius of the human race. There is no reason why the human race should not take up this battle. But just in case, there must be strong enough humans to hold the battle, and Meng Chen is one of them. Episode 16. What else do you want to do? That's right, the people from the demon clan have arrived, and there should be a fight tonight. Li Tang couldn't help but ask, "Let Yan go take a look?" No. Meng Chen shook his head and said, "We can't let him see those infinite-level duels. This will cause cracks in his Taoist heart. Seeing the world too early may not be a good thing." In the 6 years that Yan was playing carefree, others have been working hard. These words made Li Tang feel a little uncomfortable. He knew very well how hard Yan worked, whether he was using his talent to train or on the road to training. He didn't think Yan was worse than those people. At this time, He said coldly, "Why are you in a daze? Drive faster." Just finished. Meng Chen looked up with emotion. "I saw a fancy-looking spaceship rushing out from the sea of clouds and flying towards Tianshui City. Too conspicuous." Meng Chen could tell the other party's identity at a glance. Zhang Sanfeng, the last 2 fists of the human race. What a ridiculous title. In today's era of rapid development, things as primitive and weak as fists should have been eliminated long ago. Etc. The other party was heading towards Tianshui City. This made Meng Chen feel uneasy. He closed his eyes and let his mental energy cover the car. In an instant, Li Tang lost control of the entire car. No matter how hard I press the accelerator, there is no response. The car flew straight towards the destination indicated by the navigation at an extremely terrifying speed. Yeonjia. In the basement. Ji Qing, I have an uncle who is coming to see me. I'll go up there then. After hearing this, Ji Qing put down her fists, put on her blue dress, raised her big bright eyes and whispered softly, I'm with you. No need, you can just practice boxing down there with peace of mind. No. Ji Qing shook her head and said, I heard the conversation in your star platform. Someone wants to use strong force to force you to switch to the planner. You are in danger. I'm here, no one dares to touch you. She was quiet but determined. Yian did not refuse. She could see that Ji Qing looked soft but was actually very tough. Both parents are guardians of the human world, and their genes are inherently fierce and tough. Then, the two walked out of the basement. Just then, there was a knock on the door. Zhang Sanfeng has arrived. He has a wine gourd tied around his waist, has long messy hair, and has wrinkles on his face, but he has a bright smile. Shaoan. He opened his hands and hugged Dian. It's been so many years since I last saw you. You've grown so big. Zhang Sanfeng touched Jian's head. Yian also smiled. He liked this uncle very much. He couldn't explain why, but he just felt good and comfortable when he was with him. Are there any friends? Zhang Sanfeng had already noticed someone standing in the corner, but now he looked up and took a closer look. You won't know if you don't look at it, but you will be shocked when you look at it. Ding. Zhang Sanfeng's heart skipped a beat. Grandma. Why is your highness here? He had met Ji Qing once, when the marshal took her to find a miracle doctor on the Great Wall. At this time, Zhang Sanfeng's smile solidified and became a little reserved. He lowered his head and said, Hello, your highness. Ji Qing knew that Zhang Sanfeng was not the one who forced Yian, so she just said, You guys talk. Zhang Sanfeng nodded quickly, then looked at Yian and whispered, Do you want to practice turning fists? Now that I'm transferring, I'm relatively capable and can add a skill to my job transfer. This is the joint effort of your father, me, my master, and thousands of fellow boxers. It is also the highest mountain we have seen over the years. You know what I mean? Yian nodded and said, This skill is very strong. No. Zhang Sanfeng shook his head and said, I am certain that this boxer's skills are the best in the entire human world. It's just imperfect. Of course, it is precisely because he is imperfect and still has great potential that can be explored that I call him the best. As of now, we still don't have the ability to complete the skill, and we are still on the way forward, and the road ahead looks very long. When you become a boxer, let's work together to complete this magical skill that has the opportunity to make a boxer stand on top of the world. By the way, your talent and dream will definitely help a lot. Yian was about to nod. Sudden. A cold voice came from outside the door. When did you speak so quietly? Did you leave your vocal cords at home? Are you still afraid that I'll hear you? Practice with your dreams. You are so stupid that you don't forget your original intention. Meng Chen wore a windbreaker and a round hat, raised his head proudly, and strode across the threshold of Yi An's house. He wanted to be as crazy as he wanted. But when he turned around and saw. Ahem. He bent over suddenly, coughed, and said, Hello, your highness. Ji Qing looked at Meng Chen indifferently and said, Are you going to force Xian to change his job as a war strategist? Meng Chen's heart skipped a beat. The basic ability of a combat strategist is to gain insight into people's hearts and everything. So he immediately heard the meaning behind this sentence. But Meng Chen will not be scared by a little girl, even if she is the daughter of the Generalissimo. As a soldier, the interests of the country are above all else. Everything else is false. Meng Chen said in a deep voice, Yian is a natural war strategist. Everyone here knows whose blood is flowing through him. If he doesn't change his profession as a combat strategist, it will be a loss to the entire human world. Ji Qing asked, Then do you know that the Yi family wants to kill him? If you win over him, you are making an enemy of the Yi family. These two sentences surprised Yian. Ji Qing is not stupidly tough, but has reasons and evidence. She's not as silly as she is in private. Have I been cheated? He waited and watched. Meng Chen laughed and said, The Yi family is not big enough to cover the sky with one hand. Yi Wuzi is not from the circle of war strategists. He is just a paper tiger relying on the shadow of his father's generation to spread his teeth and claws. He does not inherit his father's responsibilities, nor does he have his father's abilities. He will only hide in the high heaven domain and mess with power. Low bitch. No one here thinks highly of that kind of guy. After speaking, he took off his hat and lowered his head to Ji Qing and said, "The war strategist is the backbone of the human world, and the Yi family is just a cancer. There's no way he can shake us. I can assure your highness that if Yi Wuzi dares to attack Yan, let's make the Yi family disappear." Just a few words shocked Yan's heart. What kind of group are combat strategists? Are they so scary? Are you just opening your mouth to make a super family in Gaotian territory disappear? Can you? Yan looked at Zhang Sanfeng. Zhang Sanfeng's smile was very forced. Ji Qing shook her head and said, "Yan doesn't want to be a war strategist." Meng Chen sighed, "Your Highness, this matter concerns the future of the human race." Ji Qing clasped her hands behind her back and asked, "The future of the human race must be borne by such a weak person. Then what else do you want to do?" In an instant, a domineering aura emerged. A tiger father has no dog sons. The daughter of the Generalissimo is naturally domineering. But Yan always felt something strange when he heard this. Episode 17. This is your father's will. Looking at Ji Qing's condescending look, Zhang Sanfeng and Meng Chen were not only not annoyed, but also very happy. Although the Generalissimo doesn't talk about it, everyone knows a little about his family affairs. The Generalissimo also deliberately led her past everyone. That year, Ji Qing didn't look like this at all. Her head was lowered, her whole body was shaking uncontrollably, her pupils were unfocused, and her whole body was filled with the aura of death, as if she was about to expire. No one mourned her. Fast forward a few years. She can now speak like a normal person. It means that the Generalissimo has found a way to treat her. This is very good. Meng Chen smiled and said, "Your Highness, congratulations on your recovery from a long illness. But regarding Yi En's job transfer, I also ask you not to interfere. Except for the Yi family, everyone in this world hopes that another Yi Tianwen will appear in the human world." That year the patriarch was able to lead the remnants of the defeated generals and win the battle to ascend the throne. Now, it is possible for Yi En to lead the human race to transcend the ghost and demon worlds and keep pace with the gods. This is not just what I mean, but also what the Generalissimo means. I am coming today not only to represent the will of the War Strategy Alliance, but also to represent the will of your father. Isn't this why your father asked you to come look for Yi En? Meng Chen raised his head in confusion. No. After Ji Qing answered, there was a hint of panic in her eyes. Is this what my father meant? What to do? How many people in this world can disobey their father? Could it be that becoming a war strategist is Yi En's destiny and cannot be changed? She turned back to look at Yi En, feeling a strong sense of helplessness welling up in her heart, and the thin blood on her face was gradually fading. Suddenly, Yi En stood up and walked to Ji Qing's side, saying softly, "Don't be nervous, don't panic, leave it to me. No, this is my father's will, no one can resist it." Ji Qing felt aggrieved, her eyes full of guilt. Negativity comes back again. Her temperature began to drop. At the marshal's house, Ji Shizhen was joyful without any form. Because the speed at which the ice beads shatter is already 0.26% faster than the fate card. There is nothing more joyful than this. But suddenly, crack! The fate card suddenly shattered by 0.35%. Ji Shizhen's heart skipped a beat and he picked up the star platform in a panic, almost losing his grip. He immediately contacted Yi En's neighbor, his personal guard. 0.35%. This day, there has never been such a terrifying degree of fragmentation. Something must have happened. At the same time, Yi En's home. In full view. Yi En held Ji Qing's hand tightly and said softly, "Leave it to me. Don't worry about me." He turned to look at Meng Chen and said calmly, "I won't switch to the planner for the time being. I want to devote more energy to practicing boxing." Meng Chen frowned and said, "Your dream is to become him?" Meng Chen pointed at Zhang Sanfeng without any respect in his eyes. "Did you know that he worked with me in the 8th war zone of the First Great Wall? He is almost the most useless attacker in dozens of large battle zones on the entire First Great Wall. Listen clearly. There's no point in practicing boxing. Those fists of yours cannot cause any harm to the enemy. I can accept any sword practice you have. I can't accept boxing practice." Yi En chuckled and said, "Whether you accept it or not, What does it have to do with me? The human race trained you. Meng Chen stared directly at Yan. Yan sneered, don't you understand me? When have I ever received a free resource? Everything I have now was obtained with real military achievements. I don't owe you anything, any questions? This sentence made Meng Chen frown. Indeed, unlike other infinite levels, Yan received many free gifts while growing up. He has lived here for 6 years without taking any. Everything he has now was obtained with his own hands. He owes no one. Therefore, the saying that the human race cultivated him is not very tenable. Meng Chen lowered his head and pondered for a while. Suddenly, his star station rang. He quickly picked up the call and found out it was a call from the first war zone, urging him to get there quickly. I know, we're on our way. After saying that, Meng Chen hung up the phone, looked up at Yan and said solemnly, I dream of becoming a boxer. Do you know what a decision this is? Stupid? Yan shrugged and said, I've already practiced boxing, so it's normal to be stupid. So you know if boxer is useful on the battlefield? That's the other boxers, not me. Yan replied immediately. The two started the quick question and answer mode. He is the strongest boxer in the human world today, and he is at the bottom among his peers. This is your future. Yan, I don't understand, why do you want to associate me with him? I am me, and he is him. My future will be better than his, there is no doubt about it. Where does your confidence come from? Talent. Dream? Don't you think it's ridiculous to use this talent to practice boxing? No, it's another talent. What? Meng Chen was startled. Yan spread his hands and said, I have 2 talents. You don't need to use this kind of lie to prevaricate me. Meng Chen shook his head and said, an unlimited level is valuable enough. There are not so many people in this world who are favored by God. Yan smiled and said, it just so happens that I am. After saying that, he concentrated hard, raised his fist, and accumulated strength. 2 seconds later, the majestic fist power condensed in Yan's palm. He punched out. Meng Chen waved his hand casually, dispelling the intention of his fist, and frowned, is it really true? But a power-charging talent is useless on the battlefield. No one will leave time for you to power up. I have been on the battlefield. Yan asked back. The place where your children play house is also called a battlefield? You look down on our Tianshui city soldiers? I didn't mean that. Meng Chen's face froze. What you say is like water being thrown out. Yan said indifferently, what you just said is so heartbreaking. Meng Chen looked a little gloomy. He was actually involved. He looked down at the time and snorted coldly. Damn it, in order to rush for time, I was in a hurry. People make mistakes when they are in a hurry. I saw Meng Chen take a deep breath and said, Meng Chen, the First Great Wall, the 8th War Zone, the Chief Tactical Master, have participated in 138 battles so far, with 138 wins, 0 losses, and the casualty ratio is 1 minute and 4.2 seconds. Before I entered the army, the first 100 battles were 67 wins and 33 losses, with a casualty ratio of 1 minute and 1.5 seconds. Yan, do you understand the meaning behind this string of data? I just said your battlefield is playing house, so what? My achievements are enough to silence anyone. Episode 18. The Humble Generalissimo. Yan sneered and said, suppressing others with qualifications? Is this the level of your chief strategy master? Meng Chen said indifferently, this method does not look good, but it is useful. The mission of a combat strategist can be explained clearly in 1 sentence. Before Meng Chen could continue speaking, Yan took up the sentence. Put the right people or things in the right place at the right time to seek the greatest benefit. Meng Chen nodded and said, you know very well. Very smart too. I can openly admit that I can't beat you, but of course I don't really. It's just that I'm in a hurry and don't want to talk nonsense to you. At this point, his star tower rang again. Meng Chen closed it without even looking at it, then raised his head and stared at Yan, saying, with just a few words, you have fully demonstrated your level as a descendant of Yi Tianwen. He said sternly, word by word, you don't want to be a war strategist? Be a boxer? Do you want all the top brass in the human world to go crazy for you? Yan was unmoved and suddenly said, how can there be someone like you? Just rely on your mouth to win over people? Hearing this, Meng Chen reacted suddenly. He smiled and said, okay, do you want money? It's easier. 2 o'clock. 1. I will guarantee your entry into the king's palace. 2. The inheritance left by our ancestors is in our hands. As long as you come in, I will give it to you immediately. Just add a little more. 3. We will cover all your training resources. There is only one request, to change the profession to combat strategist. Yan shook his head and said, I only have one request. Whatever, say it. Mengchen raised his head generously. Yan said calmly, I want her to recover. After speaking, he slightly raised Ji Qing's little hand. Mengchen's smiling face froze, veins gradually appeared on his forehead, and strong anger filled the whole room. Sudden. His star tower rang again. Mengchen picked it up fiercely and roared, Stop fucking pushing me. Hurry up and get reincarnated. After scolding him, he was about to hang up. Suddenly, a burst of violent breathing sounded in Mengchen's ears, like the roar of a lion. A terrifying sense of oppression shrouded Mengchen's head through a screen. Mengchen's pupils suddenly shrank and his voice trembled. Big. Grand Marshal. Why are you, suddenly? An angry roar exploded like thunder. Mengchen. Get back. I'll give you 3 minutes to appear in front of me. Mengchen hurriedly said, that, the first war zone, that matter. Yes. Jisher took a deep breath and said, after handling the matters in the first war zone, come back immediately. I have something to tell you. Before that, you hand over the star platform to my daughter. Mengchen quickly complied and handed the Xingtai hands to Ji Qing. Hey. Ji Qing murmured in a low voice, the emotion in her voice thin. Qinger. Jisher's voice was soft and almost flattering, and said, what's wrong with that Mengchen? Did he bully you? Dad, help you vent your anger. Ji Qing murmured, he wants to force Yan to change his profession to combat strategist. Ah? Jisher asked doubtfully, Yan doesn't like the profession of war strategist? Ji Qing whispered, well, he wants to practice boxing. Mengchen said that it was you who forced him to switch to the strategy. Jisher quickly cursed, fucking fart. Who forced him? No. How could Dad force Yan? Yan can do whatever he wants. Don't listen to Mengchen's nonsense. Dad can't force Yan to do something he doesn't want to do. Qinger? Are you listening? Yeah. Ji Qing lowered her head and murmured. Jisher said urgently, Qinger, just remember one sentence. No matter what you want to do, Dad will support you. No matter what requests Yan makes, Dad will satisfy them all. As long as you're happy, anything goes. If you hear others say that Dad gave some random instructions, you should contact Dad immediately. Someone is definitely twisting Dad's meaning. Qinger. You have to believe in being a father. Jisher's voice trembled as he spoke. Because the life card in front of him had been slowly shattering. His daughter's life was fading away, and it terrified him. Suddenly, Ji Qing's life card was unbroken. At this time, Ji Shirkai took a long breath. Then I'll hang up. After Ji Qing finished speaking, she hung up the star platform before her father could respond and threw it back to Mengchen. Mengchen almost missed the connection. His face was filled with panic. Because he seemed to have learned something from the conversation just now. Ji Qing's illness is not cured. He had just made her condition worse. For more than 10 years, the Generalissimo has traveled around with his crippled daughter in search of an antidote. His wife died. Ji Qing is the only spiritual sustenance of the Generalissimo. People dare not imagine what a general marshal who loses his daughter will become like. It is even more unimaginable how the Generalissimo would react if his daughter who was originally saved was killed. Zhang Sanfeng quickly grabbed Mengchen's hand and whispered, let's go. Stop talking and let's go. After the two left. In Yan's cabin. Ji Qing's eyes dimmed. Yan frowned and said, why are you so sad? Ji Qing said lonely, you helped me. But not only did I fail to protect you, but I also caused you trouble. Yan said softly, sit. Ji Qing sat next to Yan, head lowered. Yan touched her forehead. It dropped to 15 degrees. Yan didn't know how to help her raise her body temperature quickly. After all, she wasn't boiling a kettle. He actually only did one thing, treating her as a normal person. Ji Qing, I think you look down on me. Ah? Ji Qing hurriedly raised her head and said, no. Then why are you so sad? Yian frowned and said, "Isn't it because you feel sad that I can't do it alone without you? I'm going to have difficulties, I'm going to get hurt. But Ji Qing. Today is the first day we met. In all the years before you appeared, I have been living well. Nothing will happen to me just because you come here. You have also seen that Meng Chen can't defeat me with his words. There is also Zhang Sanfeng standing next to him. Do you think something will happen to me?" Ji Qing shook his head and said, "If it's just Meng Chen, it's okay, but this is my father's order." Hearing this, Yanqin was right. Ji Qing started to cool down when Meng Chen said this was your father's intention. "So you don't believe your father?" Yan asked rhetorically. "I think you shouldn't be sad, but should contact your father. He has sacrificed so much for your illness, almost using up all his energy. How could it possibly hurt you? Is your father also mentally ill?" Hearing the last sentence, Ji Qing couldn't help but smile. "He is not. I am." Yan pinched her little face and said softly, "Me too." Suddenly, Ji Qing took out the star station and called her father to communicate. "What's wrong, Qinger?" "I want 3 copies of the 4th order infinite evolution fluid, 3 different professions." "No problem." Jisha responded in a deep voice. "Send it to Yi An's house, right?" "Yes." Ji Qing nodded, and then said, "I'm sorry, father. I should have believed you." At the other end of the star platform, Jisha's heart trembled when he heard these words, and his pupils instantly became cloudy. No one can understand his emotions. 18 years. My daughter is not well yet. His love for her finally responded. Just listen to Jisha whisper, "Qinger. The best thing in my life is meeting you 18 years ago. Dad, I don't want anything, as long as you live healthy. Remember, Dad is the general marshal of the human world. Dad can do many, many things." Jisha has seen too many dandy children from aristocratic families. They rely on the power of their parents to make waves and do whatever they want, even trampling on the rules. Logically speaking, the child of the Generalissimo should be the most dandy among dandies. On the surface, he is one of the second leaders in the human world after the human king. But his children are the most well-behaved in the world. She had never enjoyed the perks of being the daughter of the Grand Marshal. She was supposed to be unruly, energetic, and arrogant. No matter how bad his character is, it is better than the one who is about to die now. So sometimes the Generalissimo would rather Ji Qing be more absurd. At least it looked human. Ji Qing remained silent and did not respond. But at this time, Jisha stood up suddenly. He saw that Ji Qing's life card in front of him was slowly healing. "Isn't it irreversible?" "I don't understand." A strong smile rose on Jisha's face. "It doesn't matter. As long as it's a good thing." Episode 19. Unlimited power storage. Yi An's home. Ji Qing's mood has stabilized. A few seconds later, a package fell from the sky and landed at the door of Yi An's house. Yi An walked out and saw that Zhang Sanfeng was still waiting at the door. He picked up the package and handed it to Yi An, saying, "Contact me when you're done." "Okay." Yi An nodded lightly. He returned to the living room with the package. "Open it and take a look." 3 copies of unlimited evolution fluid. The colorful light flashed, exuding a dazzling color, and Yi An couldn't help but speed up his heartbeat. Although he guessed that this package was sent by the Generalissimo. But when this legendary thing really appeared in front of him, Yi An still couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart. Infinite evolution fluid. Suddenly, Ji Qing looked up and stared at Yi An's profile with her big bright eyes. "Like it?" Ji Qing. "Shoo." Ji Qing raised her index finger to her lips, her cheeks bulging and cute. "Don't take no for an answer. You say everything has a price, and to get something you have to pay something. You helped me become better, and this is what you paid for. And these 3 jars are what you get. Very reasonable." Ji Qing moved her eyebrows slightly, which was a bit gentle. After Yi An was silent for a few seconds, he said, "Being respectful is worse than obeying orders." "Thank you, Your Highness." "What did you call me?" Ji Qing frowned on her face. "Your Highness, isn't that what everyone calls you?" "No, you can't call me Your Highness." "Yi An, then what should I call you?" "Ji Qing, just like my father, just call me Qinger." "Yi An, dear son." "Qinger. Ahem, it's a bit hard to pronounce." but you should get used to it. Yeah. Jiqing nodded obediently. Then you go practice boxing first, I have to change jobs. Yian said. Okay. Jiqing stood aside. She didn't go to practice boxing, she wanted to watch Yian. Yian invited Zhang Sanfeng back. The rugged man noticed that Jiqing's face looked much better, and he nodded silently. Originally, he wanted to say a few words for Meng Chen, but he was not good at words. Besides, Her Highness's situation is so special that no one knows which sentence is her key point. Zhang Sanfeng thought silently in his heart, I would rather do nothing than make a mistake. Then Your Highness, I changed my job for Yian. Jiqing nodded silently and suddenly asked, does Meng Chen still want Yian to switch to the planner? Zhang Sanfeng laughed quickly and said, no way. Everything depends on Yian's own wishes. Besides, since Yian has dual talents, there is no need to worry. Yian can switch to the planner whenever he wants. The heart of career change will cling to the talent runes. If you want to change jobs again, you have to retake it. But Yian has 2 talent runes, which means he doesn't need to relearn it at all. 1 part boxer, 1 part fighting strategist, the best of both worlds. However, it is still unclear whether Yian will switch to the planner. When Jiqing heard that Meng Chen no longer pressed, her expression softened. Then, Zhang Sanfeng wanted to know what Yian's second talent was, so he followed him to the basement. The 3 of them reached the basement. Zhang Sanfeng saw the deep fist mark under the family portrait at first glance. He walked forward quickly, lightly brushed the fist mark with his palm, and frowned. To leave such a standard fist mark on a wall is more difficult than knocking down a wall. This is your second talent, right? Show me again. Zhang Sanfeng turned to look at Yian. Yian did not hesitate, took a deep breath, mobilized the supreme fist, and the originally thin fist intention in his body suddenly became so majestic that it surged out of his body. It takes many years to transform the true energy in the human body into fist intention. Yian has time to practice in his talent world, this is normal. But the amount of fist intention is closely related to the realm. The amount of fist energy around him at this moment was so huge that it could even cause slight cracks on the ground. It is simply not something that a third-level martial artist can do. Under normal circumstances, even a genius has to reach the 4th level. So Zhang Sanfeng laughed. There is only one reason why this unreasonable situation occurs. Unreasonable power, talent. Of course, Zhang Sanfeng did not punch, but simply said, the talent you showed just now is only a bonus to strength. But I taught you a boxing technique a long time ago, which is about strength. Have you exercised? Yian quickly said, flowing water collision mountain fist. I can already punch 88 times in a row. How long will it take? Zhang Sanfeng asked. 5 seconds. Yian replied immediately. On the battlefield, no one will give you more than 5 seconds to single out his teammates. Within 5 seconds at most, support will arrive immediately. Therefore, practicing for more than 10 seconds does not have much practical significance, it is just a toy. Zhang Sanfeng nodded and said, show me. After reaching 40 punches, I will start to dodge. See if you can keep up. I have already lowered my level. Yian immediately nodded, stepped forward and punched Zhang Sanfeng in the abdomen in one swift step. There was only a dong sound, and the punch seemed to hit a big bell, and all the force dispersed left and right like sound waves. Yian's face changed slightly. Take off the load. A basic martial arts technique. Yian will too. But he has never seen Zhang Sanfeng showing off his strength like this. Stand still? No physical movement required? How did you do it? Don't be dazed. Zhang Sanfeng chuckled. Yian concentrated and continued to punch quickly. In an instant, the punch was so fast that after images appeared, and in the silent basement, the bell kept ringing. Zhang Sanfeng stared at Yian's every move. Very perfect. Lu Shui Bang Shengquan is the art of reaction. When you punch the opponent, there will be a reaction force back to you. At this moment, you convert the reaction force to your own use. Coupled with your own strength, the attack power will be stronger than the previous punch. Big. Therefore, the more consecutive hits you have in the flowing water crash mountain fist, the greater the power. The basic fighting method is basically left and right chain attacks. Experts can chain attacks with one hand. After mastery, they can do it however they want. Yian could still throw a series of one-handed punches before 40 punches. But after 40 punches, you can only do a series of left and right punches. This is normal. Everyone knows that 4 tails can move 1,000 caddies, but they don't know that the full text is that first there is the power of 1,000 caddies, and then 4 tails can move 1,000 caddies. The upper limit of Lushui Bangshan fist depends on the physical strength of the individual. If the body muscles are not strong enough to withstand the reaction force, the practice will be in vain. The highest number of consecutive rounds of the 4th level Lushui Mountain Fist was 97, and it still took 10 seconds to fight. Yan hasn't even reached the 4th level yet, he can hit 88 punches, and it only takes 5 seconds. Zhang Sanfeng really liked it more and more the more he looked at it. In his eyes, Yan was like a piece of jade that could be carved into any shape. All this passed quickly in Zhang Sanfeng's mind. Only 3 seconds have passed since the start. Yan has already thrown 66 punches. Zhang Sanfeng did not move after 40 punches as he said, but deliberately waited for this moment. With the 67th punch, Zhang Sanfeng's figure seemed to turn into a gust of wind, trying to slip through Yan's hands. Yan, who had always been highly focused, noticed. The dream is turned on and the flow of movement slows down 10 times. Can. The 67th punch failed. Yan failed to hit Zhang Sanfeng. He dodged and stood behind Yan, pointing his finger at the side of his face. Boxing, if it's not fast enough, it won't work. Can't your talent increase your speed? Zhang Sanfeng asked seriously. Yan nodded and said, my talent is to enhance my fist power. What about the side effects? Zhang Sanfeng asked. The physical exertion is huge. That's not bad. Zhang Sanfeng nodded slightly. He wasn't very excited. There are many talents that increase boxing intention, but they are not valuable. The truly powerful talent is to make oneself bigger, or to make oneself faster, or even to give oneself 2 more arms. This is much more useful than that little boxing intention. At this time, Yan suddenly asked, as far as I know, the best talent for enhancing boxing intention from ancient times to the present is called the God of Fist. The limit can increase the boxing intention by 2.5 times. Yes, what's your magnification ratio? Zhang Sanfeng asked. Although the talent to enhance boxing intention is very common. But if you can reach the pinnacle at this point, it must be a top-notch talent. I heard Yan say a little embarrassedly, I'm not sure either. But I feel, the sky's the limit. The amount of enhancement depends on how much physical energy I consume and how long it takes to accumulate energy. After listening, Zhang San was suddenly stunned, frowned, and asked, what? I didn't hear you clearly. Please say it again. What is the multiplier? Yan hurriedly said, how much physical energy is consumed, the multiplication rate will be the same. Unlimited. What? Zhang Sanfeng's tone suddenly rose to a high pitch. Episode 20. You have to be the best at the beginning of the story. Come. Zhang Sanfeng didn't say any nonsense, he directly called Yan and asked him to stand in front of him. No need for talent, just use your maximum strength and fastest speed to hit me with a straight punch. Yan did not hesitate and punched instantly. After Zhang Sanfeng recorded his strength and speed, he continued, this time, the talent is activated, 1.5 times. Okay. Yan nodded without hesitation, fisting intention surged out of his body, and he punched again. Zhang Sanfeng raised his eyebrows. The speed hasn't changed? Yes, 1.5 times does not require any accumulation, I can hit it instantly. Yan said with a smile. That's interesting. Zhang Sanfeng nodded heavily. 2 times. Yan punched fiercely. Boom. It is about 0.3 seconds slower than before. A look of surprise appeared on Zhang Sanfeng's face, and he said, so fast? Okay. 2.5 times. It is 0.8 seconds slower than the normal speed, and now there is an obvious sense of stopping and accumulating power. Zhang Sanfeng nodded and said, does this kind of strength consume a lot of physical energy? Let's put it another way, how many flowing water punches can you hit with this kind of strength? People like Yan who stay at the Dreamland training ground every day know it very well. 88 punches, but it takes nearly 3 minutes. This is too slow. Zhang Sanfeng frowned. That was 3 minutes, not 3 seconds. No one would stand still for 3 minutes and let you fight. What about 1.5 times? 15 seconds. Yan replied. The magnification difference is 100 percentage points, but the time is more than 10 times faster. But on the battlefield, 15 seconds is still too long. Zhang Sanfeng knew it well. Yian's talent is very powerful, but he has the most fatal problem. Too slow. If you can't hit anyone, everything is in vain. So he had to give Yian speed. The power of job change is also called professional heart. It is a power attached to talent, and this power can be strengthened through special resources. Moreover, the power attached to career changers by professional heart is not fixed. There are increased strength, increased speed, increased fisting intention, and increased physical fitness. In short, any attribute can be added, and multiple attributes can be added at the same time, but the attributes will be divided evenly. Yian's flaw is that he charges too slowly. So Zhang Sanfeng asked after thinking about it, gathering of fist intentions? How do you feel about changing jobs? Yian frowned and said, I'm struggling too. The concentration of fist intention can theoretically directly increase my energy storage speed by 30%. But my talent has another characteristic. The stronger your physical fitness, the faster you can accumulate energy. So I've been torn between the tree of physical strength and the concentration of fists. The concentration of fist intention can only be used to accumulate strength, but the physical strength enhanced by the physical strength tree can also enhance my endurance. Hearing this question, Zhang Sanfeng chuckled and said, I still recommend the concentration of fists. Why? Yian was puzzled and said, the tree of physical strength has grown to an advanced stage and can give me a huge amount of physical energy. In the later stage, the benefits that the physical strength tree can bring to me will definitely overwhelm the concentration of fists. This is a talent that can snowball. Seeing the confusion on Yian's face, Zhang Sanfeng said seriously, if you want to snowball, first, you must have a snowball. To put it bluntly, Yian, you don't know the level of today's geniuses. Even a healthy His Highness may not be the strongest. Ji Qing on the side had slightly raised eyebrows and was a little curious. Zhang Sanfeng continued, Yian, in my eyes, you have no actual combat ability. Your dream can add a lot to your actual combat, but you have to compare it horizontally with other geniuses. Li He, you should have seen it before, unlimited sword system. Your Highness, Ice Emperor. Your cousin Yi Xiaoshu, the book of replacement of all things. Chief General Zhang Zonghing's son, you haven't seen him yet, Zhang Demon Killer, God King Body. I'm just listing a few at random. There are more than 100 talents of this level in this generation in the human world. Which one have you beaten? Choose the tree of physical strength? You are a little too confident in yourself. My actual combat ability is lower than those of those people. Your second talent is still a charge type. It is almost useless in a single combat scenario. You still choose the physical tree? Young man, you are too conceited. Don't think about your insignificant growth every day, wait for me in the later stage. The battle for resources for the geniuses of the human world will soon begin, and the Super High School League is one of them. You can't compete with them now, and you won't be able to compete with them in the future. Zhang Sanfeng gave Yian a lecture. Yian turned his head and glanced at Ji Qing. She also nodded silently. Yian sighed in his heart, but then he thought about it, and it was indeed like this. Divine King Body, unlimited sword control, these terrifying talents can smash your dreams in the early stage. I don't know what is going on with this generation, there are so many highly talented people. At this time, Zhang Sanfeng's tone softened a bit. He said, don't underestimate the talent of boxing. The tree of physical strength can give you physical strength as wide as the ocean. But only the concentration of fist power can make you punch the top of the mountain. Yian raised his eyebrows and said, the fist on the top of the mountain? The strongest fist. Zhang Sanfeng said seriously, who is the leader among all the gods in the world? But everyone has a consensus. Whoever has the strongest ultimate lethality is the strongest. No one will compete with your physical ability. What everyone is comparing is the upper limit, the limit. There's something to be admired about the widest sea. But only the highest mountain can make people look up. So Yian, do you understand? The thoughts in your head should never be about wretched development, but about riding high. Imagine that your dream itself is a late-stage talent, and the second talent is also a late-stage talent. If you can dominate the early stage, what about the later stage? As they talked, Yian and Zhang Sanfeng both laughed. You're right, I want to be the best at the beginning of the story. Yian clenched his hands into fists, his face full of expectation and his eyes full of light. He didn't notice that Ji Qing was looking at him with her head tilted, a slight smile on her lips.